I was driving by my facilities. I saw 3 police officers outside of my facilities. There were 2 Rochester Police cars as well as 1 Monroe County Sheriff vehicle. So I pulled into the rear of my facilities and I got out of the car. Shortly after getting out of the car, I saw a Monroe County Sheriff walking in the rear of my facilities. I approached him. I told him what my name was and that I was the owner of the facilities. At that time, he asked him what was going on. He told me that they believed that someone could potentially have ran into my building and they were looking for us. So I began to assist him in trying to find the individual. We looked in several doors behind my facilities. I told him that the doors were locked. I had a bottle of water in my hand at the time, and we were just discussing. I told him that I also had keys to the place. I could let him in anywhere he wanted to go. After that, one of the doors opened and one of my barbers who works here came out. I asked him what had happened. He said that there was a young man came in to get a haircut. Police came in, took him out of the chair, and they arrested him. I told the sheriff, asked the sheriff if he wanted to look inside of the shop and see. He did. He looked inside the shop. He saw that no one was in there and that the young man was already in custody. So me and him walked to the front of the building.
You and the sheriff?
Me and the sheriff walked together to the front of the building. We're there. He was in front of me. He walked up to the other officers and the handcuffed individual. I then knew that when I saw the individual that I had seen him before. I knew him. He was a kid from the neighborhood. So at that point in time, I just asked, them, was everything all right? And it was like, yeah. I backed off and I just began to observe what was going on. At that time, basically, the young man kept trying to speak to me. The officers were checking him. The sheriff basically went on about his business, and the young man continued to call my name, Mr. Lightfoot, Mr. Lightfoot. And I went forward at one point to just get closer so I could hear his total conversation, and I was told to back away, which I did, and I backed away, and then I leaned against my building and basically just observed, and the young man was apologizing for what was going on. So basically, it was not the first time I ever seen somebody arrested in my neighborhood. I mean, it happens far too often, unfortunately, but it does. And so I always like to try to just observe and just make sure that everything's going okay. At that point in time, there was the young man moved his head again, and the police officer head goes up to the other young man. What I heard was, if you move again, I'm going to punch you in the face. When I heard that, I walked forward and I pointed and I said, you can do your job, but you don't have to do that. At that point in time, officers began to push me into my building. One of my barbers came out, got between us. I began to yell out, you guys don't have to do this. This is wrong. This is wrong. You're not going to do this. You're not going to do that. At that point in time, I was told, you want to go to jail? And I said, you can take me to jail, but you don't have to do this. I'm not going to allow you to do this. At that point in time, I was basically told by a Rochester Police officer that I was stupid. He asked me if I was a fireman. He said, you're stupid. He then turned me around, put the handcuffs on me, 2 handcuffs. He put me in the vehicle, and they drove me to about a few blocks from here to the Brooks Landing parking lot. At that point in time, I was just questioning what my name was. I was asked if I was a city councilman. I said no. I was asked if I had 3 DWIs. I said no. I was never told why I was arrested or what was going on. They asked me if I had been drinking. At that time, I told them no. They asked me if I was drunk. I said no. They asked me if I was willing to take a field sobriety test. I said yes. At that point, 3 other cop cars pulled up. The young man was behind one of the cars in one of the vehicles, and I believe it was a sheriff vehicle. And him and the sheriff talked for a few minutes. He was not in handcuffs at that time. He got back in the back of the vehicle that pulled off, and 3 more Rochester police pulled up.
This is in that parking lot.
This is in the parking lot.
Brooks Landing. Okay.
At that point, two officers went behind where I was handcuffed in the car I was handcuffed at, and I heard the officer say, "This is what you're going to say. This is what you're going to do," and they were, basically telling him how to write his report. At that point in time, they came out. They asked me if I'd take a field sobriety test. I said yes. They asked me to walk 9 steps. I walked 14. They asked me to stand for 30 seconds with one leg. I stood for 20, and they stopped me. Then they asked me to recite the letter, every letter after the letter B to the letter G. So that's C, D, E, F, G. They said that I missed the letter B, but he said recite every letter after the letter B. So at that point in time, they basically were saying that I had failed this test. They asked me if I'd take a breathalyzer. So at that point, I said no. I felt like I had no reason to even be in the vehicle, and I felt like I had no reason to be arrested for DWI when I was not driving my vehicle at the time of arrest. So therefore, at that point, I refused to basically do any other test, and they asked me my name again and my driver license, because I did not have any identification on me. My identification was in my vehicle. They never asked me for identification, physical identification. They knew I didn't have physical identification because they had already searched me. So I was put back in handcuffs. I was only out of handcuffs for maybe 10 minutes. I was put back in handcuffs. At this point, it was 8 o'clock. It was around 8 o'clock when I was arrested. Approximately about an hour and a half went by that I was in handcuffs at that point. From there, I was taken to Child Street substation, and I was again questioned more thoroughly on whether I was drinking or not, and asked to take the field sobriety test again, or the breathalyzer test again. I refused, and I told them that if there was any confusion of who I was, that they could call the police chief. He knew who I was. He could verify that. I asked if I could be relieved from the handcuffs, or if they could be placed in the front because I was under extreme pain. And I was basically refused to do that. They tried to loosen them, but they felt like they got tighter. At that point, I sat there for maybe another 45 minutes or so. Then I was basically asking, was this normal? And why wasn't I taken immediately to jail? I was never told that I was arrested for obstruction of government administration, or I was arrested for DWI. I knew that's what they were going towards because of the test and stuff that I was taking. At that point, I had a nice conversation with the police officer the sheriff who arrested me, or who did the report. And he told me he had 4 years on the job, which I think is ironic to the new information that just came out recently that said most officers have less than 4 years on the job. This guy had 4 years on the job. And so from there, I was taken to put in the back of a paddy wagon, and that's where I saw the young man who the last time I saw was at the parking lot of the Brooks Landing Hotel. And then he was there in handcuffs. We rode around. He pulled out his cell phone and started talking. I thought that was very bizarre because they had checked him so long in front of my place, and also I had took everything from me. I was just wondering how did he get a cell phone, but I ended up calling my wife, telling her where I was from the back of the paddy wagon on this young man's cell phone. From there, the vehicle stopped. The doors opened up. They asked for the cell phone. He gave it to them. The vehicle began to move again, and we were somewhere in the Lowell Avenue area, and I could tell because of the buildings, and I was familiar with. So we stopped. The the door opened up. Another guy got in, and he was in handcuffs, and so the young man that was arrested in front of my place asked this guy what was he arrested for, and he said he was arrested for soliciting a prostitute. Then the vehicle stopped, and they kept questioning the officers whether or not, when we were going to booking, and if they could post bail at that time. So the officer told them, didn't respond to that, and they said that we were going to stay there until the vehicle was full and they could fit up to eight people in there. And at the time it was 3 of us, so we knew we were going to be there for a long time. I had been in custody close to 3 hours. I was in excruciating pain from just having the handcuffs on for so long. And so from that point, I just realized that I really felt like, like at this point, I felt like sort of like a prisoner of war, if you will. I've been 12 years in the military, and I just kind of went into a mental mode as, I could potentially be here all night. So from there, the more people started coming in from being arrested for prostitution, and one guy who I believe was claustrophobic, he started freaking out. And so while he's freaking out, I'm telling the officers the guy needs medical attention. They basically refused him medical attention. At that point, I asked to go to the bathroom. I was told to urinate on myself. And then I knew at that point that, this was going to be a very difficult night for me. So basically, maybe another hour went by. Finally, they filled the thing up, and we went to booking. We got to booking, and it wasn't a busy night. We were the only ones there, the ones that were in the vehicle. So at that point, they called me up first, which I thought was amazing, because up until that point, I had got no special treatment. Not that I was looking for any, but it seems ironic that as soon as I got there, now I'm getting, I'm first. So at that point in time, I took a photo, fingerprints, whatever. I was told what my bail was, and at this point, I still didn't know what I was arrested for. I didn't know my charges. And so from there, obviously I posted bail about an hour later, and at that point, when the papers were given to me upon release, that's when I read the papers and saw what I was charged with. And I was charged with 4 charges. I was charged with DWI, obstruction of government administration, disorderly conduct, and failure to take a breathalyzer. So at that point, I went home. I called my lawyer in the morning, and I appeared in Monroe County City Court at 9:30 the next day on May 5th, and was told of my charges. I pleaded not guilty at the time, and from there, that's when the turmoil began. So, quite naturally, I'm a business owner. I own my business in Jefferson Avenue for 8 years. Employ a lot of people who are ex-felons, and I do a program called Cut the Violence, which creates safe havens for young people. So the young man that came here knew this was a safe haven. He knew this was some place that he could go and get help. And I don't know, at the time, I didn't know what he did wrong, or it didn't really matter. All I did was I heard something that I felt was inappropriate, and I acted on it. And I questioned the authority. So from there, I was basically, I had to call, my protocol is to call the fire chief. I had to call him, notify him of my arrest. I had to work with my union, which I was being told that basically if I was convicted of anything other than a traffic violation as a firefighter, that I would be immediately terminated from employment. So upon that time, we were being, even in my report, it talked about there being a police video that showed me acting inappropriate. And so we were trying to get a hold of this video. I didn't know that I had a video until a week later, when literally it came back to my attention that my video is here. So when I went and checked my DVR system, sure enough, I had majority of, probably 95% of the footage on camera. I didn't have audio, but I had visual. Prior to me having this, it was reported in the news the next day that I had pushed a police officer, that I had drove up on the scene and immediately intervened in their arrest. It was told that I was belligerent, acting, and it was said that I basically just drove up and interfered. And when you see the video, and some people will argue that the video doesn't help me at all, but you see that clearly I was not belligerent. Clearly I was assisting from the time I came up. Clearly I did not push anybody, and clearly I did not immediately interfere at all with their arrest. So to me, the video, in my opinion, what it shows is that those police officers told lies. And I think that's scary for this community, because people who are sworn to tell the truth and sworn to uphold the law broke the law by, in my opinion, telling stories. And it's obvious because the plea that I was offered took away 3 charges. So, I mean, people say, well, he was convicted of this and he pleaded guilty to this. Yeah, but 3 of them charges went away. So, quite naturally, if they had a strong enough case to get me on all 4 charges, they would have charged me and wouldn't have offered me a plea, in my opinion. I took the plea for 2 reasons. One, it was clear that, or actually three reasons. One, it was clear that if I went to trial, it was going to be my word against 4 or 5 police officers' word. And because of the lies that they had already told, I had no faith in the system. Number 2, I didn't financially have the ability to afford to go to trial. And number 3, I didn't want to chance my pension, which would have basically, if I had been convicted, I could have went to jail, which I would have lost my job, my business, my livelihood, my position in the legislature. I mean, all of those things. So I didn't feel like, I'm talking with my family and my pastor and all the individuals that were supportive, and plus there was no big outcry for my case. Nobody was running to assist me in any kind of way as far as outside forces or anything of that nature, other than personal friends and family and supporters. So I didn't feel confident in going before, and also there was a history that my family had that was not positive, and I thought wouldn't play out well in court. So because of all of those things, I had to make a very serious, hard, tough decision for me, which was to plead guilty. I pled guilty to having 2 beers. I was not drunk. I was not highly intoxicated. I pled guilty to having 2 beers. And basically from there, I was given 40 hours of community service, which I've been doing community service my entire life. I was given interlocks that are placed in all 3 of my vehicles that are very expensive for 6 months. And I was also, I was hit with a DWI misdemeanor, which is on my record now for the next 10 years. And what I would say is that, I've never been arrested. I've never had a history of violence. I've never had a history of alcoholism or drinking. I've never had any negative police contact in my life. And so none of these officers were African American. None of them were ones that I've seen before, so they had no rapport with me or this community. Matter of fact, I don't even think that they knew who I was initially. The thing that I think that was most difficult was the fact that here now, my reputation was on the line, my character, and all of those things. So, and then right after people were Republican Party asked for my resignation on the legislature, which I thought was premature because I had not even been gone to court and been convicted of anything or tried. And there were things that I was going through on my job that I felt were premature, as far as that I could lose my job, and it seemed like everyone moved towards guilt as opposed to that the police could have been in any way wrong on this issue. And my situation is that I felt that all in all, the issue got turned away from the inappropriate behavior of the police and got turned into just what I did wrong. And I would sit here and tell anybody that drinking and driving is not good. That's not something you should do. It's wrong. I would tell anybody that interfering with the police or anything like that is wrong. I didn't feel I did that. If I did anything wrong that day, if you look at the video, it was opening up my mouth. If I would have kept my mouth shut, none of this would have happened. And I chose to speak up. I chose to speak up for what I thought was right. And I ended up paying a very strong penalty for that, which was basically having the situation turned on me, and charges which I believe were trumped up just to basically cover up what I had heard and saw. When I saw the news report, the media reports and all that, I mean, it was very harsh. I mean, they had my picture up there. Look at him, look at him, look. I mean, it was like, you know, they caught Bucky Phillips, or, you know, it was like Nino Brown, which is a story, you know, that Wesley Snipes played in as a big drug dealer. You know, and I felt so bad, because I said to myself, what did they, you know, this situation that I was in was called Project Impact, which is a joint forces between police and the county sheriff and stuff. And I said, well, I looked at the resources that were there. It was over $500,000 worth of resources between the cars and the police officers. And I said, well, what impact did they really make on the community to arrest elected official and a young boy who didn't have a bell on his bicycle? That's originally was the case of why they pulled him over, because he did not have a bell on his bicycle and he looked suspicious. When they found him, they found that all he had was a couple of bags of marijuana on him, which were violation charges. And here you got arrested me for driving while intoxicated, and which was never an issue until I questioned them. So I looking at the media, how they spun this thing, I felt like, you know, if I was white, that it wouldn't have been spun like that. You know, here you had a young black African-American elected official who had never been in trouble, who had an honorable career in this community, a long-lasting career in this community, and why did they went so quickly to depict me as I was this outraged, crazy, drunken lunatic, and which clearly I was not. And that hurt a lot, and it was tough for my family to have to view situations like that, when not once did the true story of why I even spoke out against the officers ever came to light. And so I just felt that the way it was handled initially was very was just very you know, ill-willed towards me, and that right there, especially when I have such a long history of community service and never have gotten into any of this kind of trouble. Ultimately, when I look at this whole situation, it has really gotten a lot, and I think one of the reasons why people didn't come out on my support, as we saw them do in the Emily situation, and we saw a lot of Caucasians come out in the Emily situation more so, and I think the reason why black people or African Americans in this community aren't so quick to come out, they supported me as far as me individually. This was a time happened during the time when it was getting ready to be petition time for elected officials, so you had to go out and get so many signatures from your constituents. When I went out after this case, you know, I'm thinking because of the way I was depicted that my support level would go down. I actually got more signatures than I ever received ever in and I've ran 2 other successful elections. This is my last and final term if re-elected by these people. And I got more calls for support. I got more calls now coming every day at people telling me how they've been treated by the police. But I really think the difference between the Caucasian people in the community and the African Americans is there's this fear of retaliation and harassment if they come forward physically. So I think that fear is embedded in our community, and that's why a lot of our community doesn't want to come forward physically, but they're behind the scenes, they're upset and they're talking about this stuff. What I did literally a week after or so, on June 6th, not a week after, but on June 6th, we had a Cut the Violent event, but prior to that we had shop talk with the police chief right here in my barber shop. And it was a commitment that me and him, a prior commitment me and him had, and he kept and I kept. And we had the community here, a lot of senior citizens were here, and one of the overwhelming complaints coming from young and old was that they were afraid to call the police.
The conversation was frank.
And my only dealing with the police is always negative, not positive. I have
complaints.
Yeah, when they show up, they're coming to arrest people.
About how those in attendance see the police.
Right now, people in the community are just as scared of the police as they are the hustlers out here. And it shouldn't be like that.
For the people who are going to be out there being disruptive, the people who are going to be out there being violent, we got to address those. We're going to address those issues. We're going to be the police. We're going to take care of business. But we also have to make the people who are living in these neighborhoods, the people who are on our side, let them know that we're on their side, that we got their back.
And he listened. We talked about it. And I felt that I agree that there should be an independent review panel set up. I agree with that. But I'm more inclined to say that on top of that, we really need a support group for people. And that's the part that I really want to be involved with, and that's why I came up with the group P.A.T.C.H that I'm trying to put together, which is police accountability together with community help. And that is to be a support, made up of professionals, lawyers, maybe ex-probation officers, ex-police or sheriffs, and people who have the criminal justice knowledge, and who also may be on the advocacy end of it now, and also regular community people and people who have been treated in these matters to be on this committee. And what it can do, also social workers want to have people with those type of resources and professionalism, because at the end of the day, when I had my situation, I felt kind of alone. And I know there's a lot of people out there that feel like when they have situations like that, there's no, who do they call? Like, what number do you call? You know, I'm a firefighter, so I call 911 you call when you're in trouble, when you're in an emergency. 211's there, 311's there for certain situations, but there's no really, there's the Office of Public Integrity, there's the police review process, but a lot of people are intimidated by the police complaint process and feel that how can the police themselves? So therefore, I believe that there should be a support group for these individuals so they can get sound advice, number one, and professional advice and somewhat legal advice for free. And then they can also have people who are willing to walk with them, stand with them, and be with them as they go through the complaint process, so that it's not just them standing alone, that they have people with them like Emily has, so they can get a same positive result that she got. A lot of other people can get if they have that support. So that's something that we want to put in place, but it's not something we're going to do overnight. Right now, my primary focus is taking care of my family, getting my life back on track due to the constraints that have been placed upon me by the court systems. And so, I have 6 months to do certain things, and I'm just trying to get that stuff done to get my life back in order. And so that I can continue to be an effective leader for this community. I think we almost have to. I think we have to do, like with my situation, if I didn't have that videotape, I would have been depicted as this crazed lunatic, still to the community to this day. And that video, yet I didn't show it prior to me, and that one of the reasons I didn't show it prior to me taking the plea was because we were told that it didn't have any audio. It would have been difficult for me to prove what was said. So it really had no omission other than the fact that it showed that that they told lies in their report. So yes, you need to do all you can and document as much as you possibly can, because the cards can be against you, because they have the right to say and do whatever it appears that way, to say and do whatever they want, and they're trained to know what to write. They're trained to know what charges that's going to hem you up. They're trained to know how to make you guilty. That's how they're trained to do. I'm not saying every officer's out there trying to make people guilty, but I'm just saying, if they're put in a position where it's them or you, it's gonna be you. And so, if anything you can do to make your case before the courts that can help show your innocence and show them doing anything inappropriate is going to help you, whether that's video, audio, written down, witnesses. We need in this community to know, just like they have their protocol on how to prove you guilty, we need to have our protocol on how to show their inappropriate behavior as well too. No, I don't have any. I don't think anybody should be harassed or threatened or anything of that nature. But I think, overall, when I heard the community's response, a lot of people that I'm around and in my community, they were just kind of wowed by the fact that they're like, well, if they can't take care of themselves, then how are they going to take care of us? So, again, they have a tough job to do. I understand that. I pray for them every day, just like I pray for every person in my community, especially our civil servants and those who are first responders. We all have a tough job, and but at the end of the day, it's kind of like, you guys, you have a badge and a gun, and you have the opportunity to protect yourselves and do what a lot of citizens don't have and don't have access to. Nobody should be harassed. Nobody should be threatened. That shouldn't happen to anybody. So, I agree that if that's the case, that's wrong. But I also think that I would like to see more comments and statements about trying to make them better. No organization is perfect. I mean, all we've seen to hear is that they've done nothing wrong. So that message is saying that the organization is perfect. And that's what's scary. Because if you're standing up saying my organization is perfect, then we know that that's a lie and that's a problem. Because no organization is perfect and can't get better. So it'd be nice to start hearing we can do better, we're trying to do better, we realize that there are people who could be potentially bad apples out there, and I think ultimately you need to see the federal people come in and review the practices. Every organization, we get it as citizens when our federal taxes are done, and when as business owners, when we get audited and different things of that nature, just to make sure we're doing sound practices. So what makes the police any different? They should be audited, so to speak, and looked at and see if they're doing sound practices. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And if you're okay and if you're really truly perfect, then you wouldn't be afraid of a federal investigation. Yeah, I'd like to say that, again, there are police officers out there every day I work with them. I work side by side with them that do a good job. They do a great job. They get up in the morning, they want to help people out, and I totally agree with that. But then there are also those who out there who should never be on the job. They should have never taken the oath to be a police officer because they really don't understand how to have respect for all people, everybody. And I can say that because I've seen a difference in treatment. I've worked at two different sides of town, and I've seen how people are treated in the Jefferson Street area, and I've seen how people are treated in the Park Avenue, East Avenue area. And there's a difference on how police both areas. And this is one city, is what one particular mayor said that they wanted this to be, one city. One city means that everybody should be treated as one and should be treated the same. I see two cities. One that is treated fairly and one that is treated unfairly. And that's a huge gap, and that's a problem that we have in this community. And we've seen that before in this community. 47 years ago, in 1964, when we had riots in the city of Rochester, people got fed up with there being a difference and a gap between quality of life, and they pushed back. Now, I'm not saying that or in any way trying to say that that's what should happen. I don't want anyone to ever say I'm promoting riots or anything of that nature. But I have to be realistic. History tends to repeat itself. And if we're not careful to deal with these issues, to build up police accountability, diversity on the police department, maybe bring back our substations, build a rapport between police and community leaders, and also create an independent committee as well as a support group for people who are going through these things, then we're not doing all we can to close this gap and so that everybody's quality of life can be the same, then we're going to find ourselves really in a bad situation. And I would tell especially young people that, young African American males, we have to conduct ourselves much differently than other people do. And at this point, the thing that I did wrong was get upset and challenge what I heard. And there's a way of conducting yourself if you see inappropriate behavior. And that's something we're going to have to start educating people on. I was educated on it, and I learned something. And if I had to do it again, I would have done it differently. I would have just took the names down, filed a complaint, did things differently. And I'm telling people that, to educate them. Unfortunately, we have to do this because this is just the way it is, that we have to have our rules of conduct when we're dealing with police and how we can turn police contact into positive police contact, even if they're wrong. We have to have our own community handbook on how we deal with things, especially in the African American community, because if we don't, you can find yourself in a situation where they can make you the villain, and you could have all the right intentions, your heart be all in the right place, but all that can be turned around and you could be the villain, and be put in a position where, you know, your whole life is turned upside down.
You always go out of your way to impress me. Don't you know by now, ain't no need